McCartney, would you do the honor to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? There's a flag behind us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody may be seated. So there, as you notice, there's
Said, I saw you on the computer and do Google searches. And I want to just tell you a little bit about my personal story because it will be important as we get into the question session. So the first thing you should know about me is that I was born significantly south of here. And I don't mean Kentucky. I know a lot of you in the Cincinnati area think that's where the South ends. I was born in Columbia, South America. My parents are from there. And just before my 5th birthday, my mom decided, without 100% my dad's commitment, to bring my 6 brothers and sisters to America. Left everything behind in Colombia because she wanted to come to the one place on earth where your destiny is determined by your hard work, your perseverance, and your ability to dream as big as you can. So we came here with absolutely nothing. I would say we were first of all, came here legally, but we came here, 9 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment. And to watch my dad, who had had a pretty significant career in South America, come to the US and have to do rounds in the middle of the night to get his medical license, and see my mom would take us to the flea market where we would sell trinkets. That's where I said I got my sales skills from, right? Have you ever been to a flea market, right? People negotiate 5-cent items. And so we would do that because my mom's idea was if we wanted something at all, we had to work for it. The other thing my parents talked about back then was that being in America was the greatest gift she could possibly have given us, and she was right. And it was about a melting pot where we mastered the language, where we understood the civics and the history of this amazing country. And that's what my mom really made us think about. And I want to just tell one quick story. Because my mom passed away, sadly, last summer, but she was 90. She had a great life, but she was a very tough woman. And so as the youngest of 7, I was the one most eager, I would say, to become a U.S. citizen as quickly as possible. It took 13 years, by the way, because it's a long process. And my mom said to me, well, I don't know that you're going to be able to do it. I'm like, what do you mean, Mom? She goes, this is a really tough test. I mean, to be an American is something very special. And not anybody can do that. And there's this test that you have to take. I don't know that you got it in you to pass that test. That's how she would talk to me. And I said, well, okay, you know what? Challenge accepted. So as a kid, I read every word of the Declaration of Independence, learned about everybody who signed that document. What was their story? I read the Constitution backwards and forwards, understood what happened during our Constitutional Convention, read all 88 Federalist Papers, which, by the way, not great reading as a teenager, right? It's not exactly written in today's language. And I want you to know a few things. Number 1, the test isn't that hard. And by the way, Joe Biden today is trying to lower the standards to become a U.S. citizen. Waiving the English requirement, waiving the civics requirement. So that's the first thing I want you to know. The test is very easy. The second thing I want you to know, and I just said it, is that I wish Joe Biden's mom had made him go through the same process. Because what's wrong with our government today is they don't understand our Constitution, our separation of powers. The Congress has delegated way too much authority to the president. Washington, D.C.'s taken on way too much power and authority, taking it away from counties and cities and states, and instead trying to run this country remote control from Washington, D.C., and that just won't work. So from there, as I came to the U.S., I love cars, always loved automobiles. So if you're a kid growing up in South Florida, you love cars, you want to be in the car business, you go to University of Michigan. So that's where I ended up. I met my wife, been married for 34 years. We have 4 great adult kids, 1 grandchild and 1 on the way. Went to work for GM, and then realized the corporate world wasn't really my thing. It was way too bureaucratic. So I met a car dealer in Boston who said to me he wanted me to run one of his car dealerships. Now, I'd never worked in the car dealership in my life. And as some of you may know, it's a very insider game. You typically are in the car business for a long time before you run one. And here I am at 26 years old, and running a dealership. I had no idea about anything. But what I did know is that why customers hate car dealerships and why they hate buying cars, because I love cars. So what I did is I spent my time saying, what would a client want us to be like? And made that dealership extremely successful. In fact, it was the most profitable dealership in that gentleman's company our first year. I then became responsible for about a dozen dealerships in this company, helped him grow from 6 dealerships to 55 over a 12-year period. And then out of the blue, 18 years ago, I got a call from a manufacturer who said, hey, we want you to take over this little tiny dealership in the Midwest. It's the worst performing dealership on our network, and we want you to buy it. And I said to myself, okay, well, being a car dealer owner is also the ultimate insider game. Because typically it's passed down from generation to generation. It's very hard to crack that. And I said, well, here's this opportunity. The problem is, opportunity and money were not in alignment. So I took every cent I had. When I tell you every cent I had, let me not exaggerate that point. Every cent I ever had in my life to buy that one dealership. And then sadly, I was a little short. So I did what I never thought I would do, was I called my mom and said, hey mom, I need a loan. And I think I made her day. And she said, well, here's what we're going to do. You're going to put a mortgage on my home in your name, because I don't want to be responsible if you don't pay it. And then whatever interest rate you get, I'm going to charge you 5 points over that. And I said, Mom, are you charging me a fee? She goes, do you have a better offer? So that's my mom in a nutshell. So I did the deal that I had to do, bought that one dealership. It was selling 4 cars a month. By the time I sold it 3 years ago, that dealership was selling 300 cars a month. And it was the largest seller of luxury automobiles anywhere in the Midwest. I built 14 other dealerships after that, including the dealership over in Fort Mitchell that I sold to the Weilers a few years ago. And that company that I had, there you go. That company that I had did about $1 billion in sales, employed about 1,000 people in Ohio. And like I said, I sold that company. And then started a technology company. Everybody thought I was crazy, because nobody can start a technology company. You have to, again, be an insider and know how that works. But I did that. Everybody said, you'll never make it. Well, happy to report that company is now owned by 5 public companies. It's extremely successful. What we do is we make car titles digital by using blockchain technology. And all questions are allowed tonight, except for what is blockchain. We don't have enough time tonight. So that question's off the list. But the reason I'm here, and the reason I was here a year ago, is because I literally, like all of you, woke up one day in March of 2020 and saw a government that weaponized itself against our citizens. And that shock was so great for me. I said, what kind of government would tell you you're essential, you're not? You have to close your business, you can keep yours open. You have to wear a mask till 10, and you have to wear a mask till that's starting at 9 in the morning. I just didn't think that that was the country that we were in. And so I decided to run for the United States Senate. And that's the path that I'm on right now. So I don't want to spend a lot of time having a political speech. I'm not a big fan of politicians, to be honest with you, especially DC politicians who've been there forever. So I want to be able to answer questions that you may have. So with that, I said to Bill, I said, we're going to do this like Merv Griffin. And then Colton, who works on my team, is a little bit younger, goes, who's Merv Griffin? No, he doesn't know. I'm just kidding. Hayden definitely doesn't know who Merv Griffin is. So with that, Bill, and like I said, all questions, I have not read them. I want you to suspend your Midwest kindness, and I want you to ask me the toughest questions that you can, because picking this next United States Senator is going to determine whether the Republicans control the Senate or not. There's only 3 senators that represent what are called red states, states that the president won by a significant margin. Ohio, West Virginia, and Montana. That's it. Do you know how many states are up in 26 that situation exists? 0. Do you know how many states exist in 28 in that scenario? 0. So we, Ohio, you, voters, are determining the balance of the United States Senate this year for the rest of this decade. Imagine what we've seen in the last 2 years, by the way. It's only been 2 years that Biden and the Democrats have run our country. What would happen if we give them control of our federal government for the rest of this decade. That's what's at stake. Well, number one is inflation in terms of immediate concern, like today, like we have to deal with this now, is we talked about it, we talked about inflation. Number two, what's going on in our border, and number three, what's going on in our foreign policy that's going to lead us to the brink of war. Those are the three like immediate ones. But overarching all of that, Bill, is what I talked about earlier. This idea that it's controversial or it's partisan to say this is the greatest country on earth, I'm proud to be an American. That American exceptionalism exists and that the world is safer, more prosperous, and more secure than any time in human history because America led. That we don't feel that way, like we don't wake up feeling that pride. I lived in Boston when 9/11 happened. The planes left from there, you remember. And I went down to Ground Zero shortly after, like beginning of October. Every single corner of New York City had an American flag in the window. People said hello to each other. The incredible American pride that we had. We need to restore that feeling. Because until we get our center and understand that that's fundamental, we will never be able to make America great again. And then the second thing is, we have to restore a desire and feeling of faith in our system of education. When I was a kid, I'm sure like all of you, what did you do every single morning when you were a kid in school?
Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance and a prayer. Every single day. But today, gotten rid of that out of our schools. And the results show. We have our universities that don't teach kids skills. They teach kids why they're victims, why to hate America. We have to end that. I'm a big believer in going after these institutions. I chaired the Board of Trustees at Cleveland State University, and I'm very proud of the fact that when I was there, we got rid of our Confucius Institute. We made certain that we focused everybody on student achievement, and we respected free speech on campus. We're the only university in all of Ohio, the entire system, that scored the highest rating in free speech. And that's really important. And my charge to Adam would be, you have boards of trustees that have all been appointed by Republican governors now. And we have 142 diversity, equity, and inclusion officers at Ohio State University. That's a travesty. Genuine travesty. I can tell you, I've been in those meetings. I've been in those meetings. You know what the DEI guy does? He's on his phone, not really paying attention. And every like 15 minutes he said, we gotta talk about diversity. We were talking about the janitor's budget, but sure. 142 people being paid $200,000 plus a year to spew nonsense. Don't need that. We don't need that. We're not a racist country. Prove it, Bernie. Prove it. You're not a racist country. We have millions of people that want to come here. How do you have a racist country? If we were a racist country, Hispanics would be going the other way. Mexico would be telling us to build a wall. Okay? We wouldn't have people from Africa risking their lives to come here that are black. By the way, and again, this is something that we should be able to say out loud and proudly. Do you know the country on earth that has the most prosperous Hispanics? The United States of America. Do you know what country on earth has the most prosperous blacks in the world? America. The country that has the most prosperous women on earth? America. We're racist? Are you kidding me? And it'll point to Norway and Sweden. Look how great Norway and Sweden does. You mean the country that's 99.9% white? That doesn't allow anybody to come into their country? We want to be like them? Are you kidding me? And again, we have to just stop being silent and quiet. Because it's our inability to fight back against this nonsense that's gotten us to where we are today. You got to be unapologetically pro-America, unapologetically pro-faith, unapologetically saying loudly, this is the greatest country on earth and I will defend it. Because the left is after the soul of our country. That's the one thing that Biden said right. And what he's done and what the Democrats have done over the last 2 years is such an utter disaster. And yet the media doesn't cover it. So we have to spread that word.
Okay. First question.
You get attacked. Not like that. I mean, this is a guy who has been attacked where he was a Russian agent. Remember that?
He's a Russian operative. And by the way, we laugh now, but go back to 2017. You were having arguments with people about this. Then the Ukraine phone call on that impeachment. COVID and everything that happened during that period of time. This is a man that's been attacked mercilessly. And by the way, if you've ever been to Palm Beach, and I said this to him, I said, why? Look at your life. Look at the life you have here. This is crazy. He lives in $1 billion home. Because that's what it's worth, by the way. Even though the New York Attorney General says it's worth $75 billion, which is hilarious. He lives in $1 billion home in Palm Beach. He's got a great life, beautiful jet. And yet, what does he do? He wakes up every day and fights for us. And I don't know about you, I don't like abandoning people that fought for us. And I know there's a big movement in the Republican Party that says, oh, he's too divisive, he's too this, he's too that. He didn't abandon us. He fought like hell. We need him back. And I will be working very hard to make certain that our nominee is President Donald J. Trump and that he wins and that gets our country back on track. And I want to make sure that I think this is very important, because there may be other candidates in the race. There's Matt Dolan, maybe Frank LaRose decides that being Secretary of State isn't that big a deal, that you can campaign while just, having just won that office. I don't know. He's a nice man as well, but we just elected you for a job. Like, why are you looking for another one? It's crazy. You not like that job, right? You probably should have told us before the election. But every candidate that you talk to, you should ask them the same question. And if they answer it this way, oh, that's up to the voters to decide. I'm not going to weigh into that. Make a decision, tell us where you stand, have the courage to do that, or shut the heck up. Because politicians meander around answers. No, I'm sorry, take a position. Do you support President Trump as a nominee, yes or no? Take a position. Because they've been asked. Matt Dolan clearly absolutely not. In fact, won't even support him if he's a nominee. And the other person I just mentioned said, well, I'm not going to weigh into that. That's not my decision. To me, that tells you a lot about what you need to know. I will never apologize for my beliefs. I will never apologize for supporting American workers. I will never support for fighting for the middle class to grow and thrive in this country. And I will never apologize for shrinking the size of the U.S. government. And I will certainly never apologize for putting America at the forefront of every decision I make when it comes to what we do around the globe. Because if we have veterans that are suffering in our streets, and we're putting billions of dollars into Ukraine, I'm sorry, that is crazy priorities. Crazy priorities. We are almost basically broke, and we're out there saving the pensions of Ukrainian teachers. That is crazy, I'm sorry. We have to just say this stuff out loud and say, no, that is wrong. When we have water issues in our towns that we can't fund, but I'm going to go fund a bridge in Afghanistan, which, by the way, then we leave behind. We spent $2 billion building Bagram Air Force Base and handed it over to the Taliban. We handed them over equipment. I'm going to tell you this last story because I think it's important. President Trump, about 9 months before he left office, he wanted to leave Afghanistan because we had been there way too long. But we had to leave in an orderly way. So he had, as he calls them, the TV generals. Okay? He had the TV generals in front of him. And he says to them, they're sitting there talking all this, blah, 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 as he tells the story. Like he said, I wasn't listening to them. They're talking about it. He interrupted the meeting and goes, what do we do about the tents? I said, excuse me, sir, what do you mean about the tents? He goes, there's big, beautiful tents. We have these big, beautiful tents in Afghanistan. They're watertight, they have these beautiful zippers, they don't let moisture come in. I mean, this guy, President Trump goes on for like 5 minutes selling like an infomercial about tents, or an army tents. And he goes, sir, I get it. What's your point? I want every damn tent back. What was the message you were sending those generals? You talking to me about leaving equipment behind? F-15s? Weapons? I want the tents. That's the difference between Trump and Biden. Is that kind of ability to know where are our priorities. We have to get back to that place. So I don't know, Bill, we have one Sure. but I believe election day should be a holiday, and that should be the day of national pride. Like, hey, we get to do this. Remind each other, we live in this amazing free country, we get to go vote today, right? That should be, and by the way, the left should agree that they love holidays, okay? They love government pay days, right? But that's not the law today. That's not the law today. Ballot harvesting is allowed, voting 45 days early or 30 days early by mail, all these. So we as Republicans have to encourage people to vote whichever way they want to vote. So if you're a conservative and you know somebody else who's like-minded, get them to vote early, not often, that's Democrats, just early, however they like, whatever's easier, help them get an absentee ballot if they need to. So don't, until we change the rules, let's use the rules and play the game that they've set. That's really, really important. That's how we'll overwhelm them at the ballot box. And that's what's going to get the Democrats. Listen, here's the thing. We are right on ideas. They're just right on these horrible, hideous tactics. So it's our ideas that win. We got to talk that way. And the last thing I'll leave with all of you, and I'll answer any questions you have individually. Don't let people disparage what you do. You're right. You are correct. You love this country. That's what unites everybody in this room. Don't let people call you names and have it stick. Like I said, somebody called me a stick when I was a kid. I thought it was dumb. So next time you hear somebody call you an extreme MAGA Republican, say thank you very much. Because it means that I extremely care about this country. I extremely love this country. And you're the ones fighting on the right side of you're on the right side of history. The history books will judge the left very poorly in the future. And I don't want you to leave this room with despair. We will win. We will get our country back. We will celebrate the 250th anniversary of the greatest country on earth in 2026 with a country that's free, that's prosperous, that has the right government in place. We will. And we'll look back at this day and say, wow, that was a crazy time. And the way we got here to this special place of freedom and feeling that we got our country back, that you feel pride when you fly that flag and that you served our country, is because you know that you played a role in making that happen. That you fought hard, that you made extra phone calls, you knocked on extra doors, you sent out more petitions, you made more phone calls. Those are the things that's on all of us to do. We're all called in one way or another to do what's right. And I urge all of you, it's a little bit more, do a little bit more, work a little bit harder, because that's the day that I have in mind. That's the day that's my day that I think about what I'm going to feel like when I come here and I'm fighting my bill on July 4th of 2026 and go, wow, what an amazing day. Bill, you remember those previous days? Oh my gosh, we laugh. We'll be able to laugh about it. Today we cry. 2026 we'll laugh because we've got our country back and we'll have the pride, immense pride in knowing that we played a role in making that happen. So thank you, all of you. Thank you, Bill, for putting this on. Thank you all for being so engaged and caring so much about this amazing country. It's what will get us to where we need to be. So thank you.